Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at 5 players to avoid in FPL, so let's get straight into it. Now, the first one is a controversial one because he scored the most points last season, but it is Ollie Watkins. Now, the reason I think he is a player to avoid is because he hasn't had 1 minute of pre-season yet. He's not featured in any of Aston Villa's pre-season friendlies, he's not even been in the squad. So the chances of him actually starting game week 1 for me are pretty low. Of course, he could just come straight back in and play, but to me that seems a little bit unlikely. Another reason is the fixtures. You'll notice that Arsenal at home fixture in game week 2 on screen. That's a terrible fixture. Arsenal are the best defence in the league. Well, they were last season anyway, and I don't expect that to change. So what I'd essentially do is if you do want Watkins, look at getting him in game week 3 for their good run of fixtures from game week 3 onwards. Okay, so the second player to avoid is another popular one, another player who had a fantastic season last year. I think he managed 11 goals and 10 assists, so plenty of FPL points as well. It's Anthony Gordon. And the reasoning is pretty similar to Ollie Watkins. Anthony Gordon has only managed 45 minutes of preseason football so far. So I'm not convinced that he gets thrown straight in for that game week 1 fixture against Southampton, especially as players like Jacob Murphy and Harvey Barnes have had a lot of preseason minutes. They've also had a fair amount of goals and assists in preseason. It's not like they're coming in cold. They've been playing fantastically well. So it wouldn't surprise me if we see a front three of Barnes, Isak, and Murphy to start that game week 1 fixture. Potentially even Almiron, but I imagine Murphy's played his way into it. Obviously, Gordon will come into the team later down the line, but I don't think he starts in game week 1. The third player on this list is also a Newcastle player, but he's on the list for a very different reason. He has had a full preseason. He's played plenty of minutes in preseason. I think he's even captained the Newcastle team in most preseason games. So I do expect him to start in game week 1. I believe he's been starting at left centre back, which is a position that's been left open since Sven Botman got injured. And I don't believe he's due back anytime soon. So that shouldn't be an issue. I do think he'll start game week 1 at left centre back, but I'm not sure that Dan Burn is in Newcastle's first 11 long term. So during the summer, they bought Lloyd Kelly from Bournemouth, who is a left footed centre back who can and has played left centre back and left back, which suggests that they wanted to strengthen in that position. He could be a long term option at left centre back, or of course, Botman will be coming back. So there's 2 options. Also, Newcastle were looking at Mark Gahey quite heavily. Whether that's to play right centre back instead of Fabian Schär, or to play left centre back instead of Dan Burns, Sven Botman, either way, it doesn't look great for Dan Burns' minutes prospects. What we did see though is Dan Burn play quite a lot at left back last season and the season before, though Newcastle now have, or they did have him last season, but he's been getting more minutes now, Lewis Hall. In pre-season, he's played a lot of minutes. I'm pretty sure he scored a goal in pre-season. I think he might have got an assist as well. He's now much more preferred under Eddie Howe. So it wouldn't surprise me if we see him start at left back in game week 1. And if he plays well, I'm sure he'd keep his place. In which case, I don't think that Dan Burn is probably in Newcastle's first 11. So, albeit he's good value at 4.5 million, I think he's only good value for the first few weeks until some of those other players either come back from injury or just come into the team. Up next, we've got Martin Ødegaard. Now, this isn't a minutes issue like it is with the ones that we've been previously talking about. I don't imagine that Ødegaard won't get the minutes this season. He has had a full pre-season, so he will start in game week 1. The problem with Ødegaard for me is the fixtures. If you can see the fixtures on screen there, it's Wolves at home, Villa away, Brighton at home, Spurs away, and City away. Ødegaard tends to be better in games where he's facing teams that will just sit back, like a low block, so to speak. I don't believe any of those five teams will play in that way. Wolves, potentially, if any of them, but I don't believe any of them will. He tends to sit a bit deeper in games where it's not against a low block, meaning that his attacking returns aren't as likely. He's not likely to be making the runs into the box, or not as likely anyway. That's not to say he won't do it, but I don't like the fixtures for him, so that's the reason I'd avoid Ødegaard. Lastly, we have Matt Turner of Nottingham Forest. Obviously, we all like to try and find a starting 4 million goalkeeper. I don't believe Matt Turner is that. Nottingham Forest have Sells and they have a new goalkeeper that they bought in the summer, Miguel. I'm pretty sure they'll both be ahead of Matt Turner in the pecking order, so I don't think we'll actually get any games from him. Turner's also over 20% owned right now. I think he's actually the second highest owned goalkeeper behind Raya. So not only will you not get any games, but the chances of him dropping in price are pretty high. As soon as people realise that he's not going to play any games and they want to get a new keeper in, people will start selling. The higher owned he is, the more people there are to sell, and then his price will fall. So if you're going to pick a 4 million goalkeeper who's not going to play, pick one that isn't very highly owned. Okay, so that rounds up the five players that I think you should avoid in your teams to start the season. Of course, this is just my opinion. Feel free to tell me I'm wrong in the comments. But yeah, this is just my opinion. If you think that they're great, then pick them. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.